everyone, Andrew from WiZDOM here with the 5th video in how to help your kids get into property. And in this video, I want to talk about the structure that I probably prefer with regard to how to help your kids get into property. And that is loaning the money. Now, I understand instantly that a lot of you are thinking, well, I don't necessarily want to be a bank and I don't necessarily want to be a lender. But I think you'll find that as we work through the advantages and disadvantages of this particular structure, you may find that it's the best structure, not to take away from all of the other ways that you can go about it. So first things first, let's look at how does that actually come together? And what are the things that we need to be thinking about when we create this kind of structure to help our kids get into property? Now, I've worked with effectively this situation before. A typical parents who have come with an existing principal place of residence or investment property, doesn't matter, but the property is worth $1 million. And again, because of great financial decisions, they have paid their existing loan down to $100,000. Now, in that previous situation, we talked about the kids going and buying a $500,000 property. And in order for them to be able to do that, when it comes to settlement costs, we're going to need another $25,000, which is equivalent to 5% of the property purchase price. And then that will mean we need a total of $525,000. Now, if we assume that our kids are in a reasonable borrowing situation and they will be able to get a loan, and maybe they get some government support to be able to do that or whatever that looks like, and maybe even they've saved up a little bit of money themselves. So let's assume for the sake of argument that they've saved up $25,000 of their own right, and they're obviously willing to put that towards the property. Well, if they're in a good borrowing situation, any lender without lender's mortgage insurance is going to be happy to lend 80% of the purchase price, assuming they're in a servicing position to be able to repay that money. And in that case, that means we're going to have a loan here of $400,000. So from a structural perspective, our kids are going to have a loan for $400,000. And as I've discussed before, when it comes to the mortgage, because it doesn't involve the parents at all, that's just going to involve the kids. And so that is a very clean loan for $400,000. And we all understand how they would go about that. But from the math, we are still $100,000 short. And this is where, as parents, you could step in and help them with the $100,000. Now, I spoke previously about you could provide that as a gift, but I do have some asset protection concerns, or maybe you have some asset protection concerns, or maybe some concerns about your children's choosing partner, and you want to put some level of protection around that money. Well, this is where I feel that a loan comes in. Now, you might not have that cash as well available to you. And so it's not simply a case of going and drawing that $100,000 out of the bank and providing it across to your kids as a loan. Instead, we've got to go and get that. So as I previously said, lenders are willing to provide up to 80% of the property value. And as a result of that, up to potentially $800,000. So we have plenty of equity here that we are able to draw to be able to go and borrow that $100,000. Now, in this particular circumstance, it wouldn't be your children who are borrowing that money. It is you that's going to the bank and saying, I would like to release equity of $100,000 from my property. I know that I have it available to me, and we're in a comfortable servicing situation. We can afford to be able to repay that debt. So now in that situation, of course, you're going to have an additional loan, assuming you still have your 100, of a further $100,000. And because this doesn't involve your children at all, it obviously involves a mortgage direct over your property, generally speaking, with the same lender that has the other $100,000 normal home loan as well. Now, again, I'm sure a lot of you are thinking, well, hang on, that makes us responsible for that $100,000 rather than the kids. Absolutely, it does. But as I spoke in previous videos about guarantee situations, effectively with guarantee situations, you can be held responsible for that money anyway. And so the difference here, and what I like about it, is effectively twofold. One is cleanliness, in the sense of you are only dealing with your financial institution and it doesn't involve any other financial institution. There's no second mortgages. There's no tie across here to other loans and other responsibility. It is very, very clean with you and your lender, and of course your kids and their lender as well. The other thing that I like about this and how this fixes or improves one of the disadvantages of that guarantee relationship is about your future borrowing. Because remember that I said, because essentially you're on that other loan for the full amount, and they will take that you are on that full amount. Sorry, this is also in co-borrowing as well. Well, this keeps that relatively clean as well. You are only responsible for that $100,000 loan. That's the only thing in your name, and your kids' property, their income, and their security position has nothing to do with yours. And again, so I find this can be quite a bit cleaner with regard to you then continuing to leverage further on your equity or whatever financial decisions that you make with your future property journey. It is much, much cleaner because you are not tied to them at all. Now, from an asset protection perspective, I don't mind whether this is a gift, whether we're talking about cash or we're talking about this structure with regard to whenever the money goes across this line into your children, it is always on a legal contract. So in here, I absolutely want a legal agreement between you guys and your children with regard to what this lend is, what it looks like, and how is that responsible. And I don't mind whether that's coming out of a cash account or whether it's coming out of borrowed money that you've gone and got from the bank. Either way that you look at it, the money does not sort of pass through here up to your kids unless you have that good legal agreement in place. Now, the advantage of that kind of thing, and I appreciate it does cost some money and you're going to need a lawyer or somebody similar to draw that up, depending on how absolutely watertight you want that legal agreement to be. But generally speaking, I find that lawyers are quite reasonable when it comes to this kind of cost, presuming that it's a relatively straightforward arrangement. The beautiful thing about that is that that absolutely acknowledges this debt. And so again, any situation where you're concerned about the future of that relationship or anything like that, and you want to make sure that you put protection in place, both for your money, but also about keeping your money available for your kids beyond whatever happens in that relationship, it is really, really important to do this. What that effectively means is that until that loan is repaid, then of course, via that legal agreement, that money is owed. And that means that if anything happens with this relationship, well, of course, your interest in that property, the fact that you've lent the money is there, and under that legal agreement, you will be able to draw that money back, particularly in the circumstances where for any reason that property is sold. Well, again, that money needs to be repaid. It comes back over here, and of course, you have that available again to you to be able to use it to help your children rebuild or get back into the property market or whatever happens, beyond that relationship breakdown. Now, of course, I'm not trying to be doomsday about this or negative about this, but this is the reality of the modern world. And I really think that it's important when it comes to, both parents and their kids, that we're realistic about the percentage chance that that could occur, and how do we appropriately protect ourselves on the basis that that does occur. Because again, you've worked really, really hard to get yourself into this situation, to be able to support your children getting into property, and we would hate to see you lose any of that position or any of that hard work go to waste on the basis of, unfortunately, decisions that are outside of your control. The other thing that I really like about this is the overall ability to borrow. So because you as parents are taking on this loan and your kids are only taking on an 80% loan without lender's mortgage insurance, or potentially a little bit more with lender's mortgage insurance, what I like about this particular structure as well is flexibility, in the sense of your kids' servicing position, which honestly is often the most difficult part, because as I said previously in previous videos, your kids are often getting, they're starting out, right? They're not at their maximum earning capacity. And so often, they run out of servicing ability before they necessarily run out of deposit. In other words, it's much easier earlier in life to be able to build your income up, and as a result of that, your borrowing ability, than it necessarily is to be able to put hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars away in the bank as deposit. And so what I like about that is that it really does maximize your children's borrowing capacity, because their borrowing capacity is just dedicated to this loan. And you're borrowing this amount of money. And so as a result of that, this lender that's organising this loan has no idea about anything that's happening over here, nor should they care. And so you can see that this arrangement pushes that maximum purchase price further. Now, it doesn't mean that they're not going to be responsible for repaying this debt as well. The reality is that obviously you've got a legal agreement here that they should be repaying this debt. But again, you've got lots of flexibility about that because we don't have a bank dictating terms and what that looks like. Instead, it's a private arrangement between you two. And so as a result of that, you could choose, for argument's sake, to do this interest only for a period of time, or they could run a hyper-aggressive repayment on this as well. Hell, if that money was cash and you were happy with a relatively low return on that, you may only charge a small interest rate or even zero interest rate on that money until that's returned. So as a result of that, I really like that flexibility as well to be able to control that and what that looks like. And we're not being dictated to from the bank. Now, again, only fair that I talk about the disadvantages, and probably the single biggest disadvantage of this particular structure is the fact that you are borrowing this money. So at the end of the day, you are responsible for that. You are choosing to lend that to your children. And so if anything happens and that doesn't get returned, well, the reality is that this bank is still going to want their money back. As I said to you, I don't think that's massively disadvantageous in comparison to the guarantee arrangement, because essentially you're inadvertently responsible for that money anyway. However, it is good to know, and I guess a consideration of yours, that you are wholly responsible for that money. So as I said before, really if you are leveraging equity and helping your kids get into property, this is probably my number one structure, depending on the circumstance, of course, and everything else involved there. But I would certainly prefer, and it's advice that I provide my clients all of the time and all of the WiZDOM finance strategists do as well, that our preferred structure looks like this. And if for any reason our clients are uncomfortable with that or would prefer to go down the other route, well, of course, we're more than happy supporting them, putting a guarantee arrangement in place instead. So I hope that that's been helpful. And again, I hope that this is a structure and breaking that down for you makes sense to you. And it's a structure that you may consider using with regard to helping your kids get into property. So I look forward to bringing you more videos in the near future. We've got another couple of structures to work through, and then I do want to wrap it all up for you. Until then, happy investing and bye.